All right, hello everybody. We got a few people coming in still, so we'll just give it one more minute before we get started. Thank you for everybody joining us today. All right, well, with time being what it is, greetings from the city of Texas City. Hey, welcome. Yeah, so everybody, welcome to this webinar with Fulton County. We're very excited to have them join us today to talk about their modernization story and really give it an opportunity for everybody to learn from your peers, which is one of the great things about this community is that, the openness and the sharing among different cities, counties, states. So welcome everybody, and I would like to pass it over to our Director of Customer Advocacy, Jeanette Bruno. But before we do that, just as a reminder, if you have any questions, you can use the Q&A box at the bottom. Also, feel free to throw in any comments or questions into the chat as well. You can let us know where you're calling in from, how the weather is there, whatever the usual generic stuff we do that we share on these wild things. So please welcome everybody, and I'll pass it over to Jeanette.
Thanks so much, Blake. Good afternoon, good morning, everyone from where you're joining us today. We're really excited to host today's webinar with our colleague here, Mark Hawks from Fulton County. He is the Chief Assistant Purchasing Agent for the county, and we're really excited today to have the opportunity to pick Mark's brain about his experience and Fulton County's modernization journey. So before we jump into our discussion, we just wanted to make sure that everyone on the line was aware that here at Sovra, we are a full source to contract solution that is fully intuitive, automated, integrated, and really public sector exclusive. I neglected to mention in my intro, but I am a former Fed and have also worked in the procurement modernization space at the city of Philadelphia. So we're really excited today to make sure that we are bringing to light Mark's stories and experiences of working with us through our full source to contract solution. So with that, I will just kind of introduce a little bit of our engagement with Fulton County. So Fulton County and Sovra first partnered back in March of 2020 when there was an urgent need to transition to digital solutions. And since then, the relationship has continued to blossom with additional features being added, increased collaboration between Sovra and Fulton County, and continuing and ongoing support to the procurement officers there. And so Fulton County is currently utilizing Sovra's full source to contract solution to support its procurement processes. And we're also pleased to support many other cities and towns within Fulton County through our Georgia Purchasing Group platform. So with that, I'd like to move into the very first question that we have today for you, Mark, which is what prompted your team at Fulton County to start thinking seriously about modernizing your procurement process?
First of all, I want to thank everyone for being a part of this webinar. Thank you, Jeanette. And well, let me say this. When the pandemic hit, even before it hit, we had what we call the bid board, where we would post our solicitations online. Vendors would go download it. They didn't submit it back online, but they did download the documents, and then they would bring them in person. When the pandemic hit at that time, and we could not meet in person, could not allow people to come to the building. At that time, our bid board was really on the verge of its last leg. It was about to just go down. We were doing all we could, Band-Aids and emergency surgery to keep the bid board operating. But when the pandemic hit, we realized we had to do something. We had to do an online receiving of bids, posting bids. We had to kind of replace the bid board. And so when we started looking, Sovra. Hello.
Hi, Mark, yeah, you still there?
Did
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
I think we lost
that's
you
all
for
right.
1 second there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but I was just saying because of the pandemic, I led up to the story of how where we were. We really were at a point we needed to do something anyway because the bid board we had was held together with band-aids, scraps, and everything else. And so when the pandemic came, we knew we needed a solution where we could post bids as well as receive bids. And so that's where we moved to Sovra.
Um, Thank you, Mark. And I can echo from my time working at the city in March of 2020. I was actually on maternity leave, but I know that like many other governments, we definitely felt the pandemic really accelerating some of the modernization projects that we had in our queue. So that definitely resonates with me as a former Govy here. I'd like to move to our next question. So you sort of talked a little bit about kind of the held together by Band-Aids. So can you walk us through your modernization journey and specifically sort of which features did you start with and what have you added since? So kind of give us that overview of what this journey has looked like for you from those early days in March of 2020.
Okay, great. Well, it started out what Bennett Stover calls the sourcing page. And that's where you post your solicitations, it'll close, and then you can receive the bids on that one module. I believe there's 7. I kind of get them mixed up sometime, but there's roughly about 7 modules. The reality, we started in the middle of all those 7, which is the sourcing page, the bidding page, because we needed something again to replace our bid board. So with that sourcing page, we could post our solicitations, vendors could come, look at the bids, download those bids, and then submit their bids. And so that's where we started. And so after things sort of calmed down, if you want to say it calmed down, we got to the point where we said, well, we need to do more. We looked back at what Sovra offered, and they offered a solution that a purchasing term is cradle to grave, all the way from the inception, all the way to the point where you have contract and even contract administration. And so this platform provided all those elements, those key elements. And so our director, Ms. Felicia Strong Whitaker, decided let's add everything that goes after the sourcing, and we'll come back to what starts what you may say the cradle, the beginning. And so we went from sourcing to award to vendor performance. That's one area that our board basically mandated that on a quarterly basis, we have to evaluate the vendors that have contracts with Fulton County. The system we had was pretty much the same way that the bid board was. It was on Band-Aids. And it basically was at the point where it crashed. And so Ms. Whitaker, having talked with Sovra, realized that they had a platform, one of the modules, vendor performance, could take the place of our vendor evaluation. And so we implemented that. And so that's how we sort of walked through it. We put that in. She said, we can do that. So senior management looked at it. They loved it because you can send out reminders. You can put up anything that the vendor does. If they have to do work improvement, you can add those documents into that evaluation, notify them of their evaluations. So it just more encompassing of what we needed than what we were doing. So we just loved it. So we started adding all of those different modules, contract management when the board approves it, creating the contract with templates, and then awarding those and keeping track of those. We've started, so that's where we sort of went from the middle to the end. And then we jumped back to the beginning, which is the request. We used to use Outlook, email. If a department wanted a solicitation or they wanted a PO cut, they would email and say, hey, we need this or we need that. And so that took the place of that. And then we moved into collaboration. where normally the collaboration we did before SOVRA, we would email the document, the solicitation document, back and forth between us and the end user. If they had a technical advisor, we had to email it to them. They'd email it back to us. And we had to make sure we captured all their changes. We had to make sure they didn't change any of our things because departments have a tendency to do that. So you got to keep an eye on them. So it was just real cumbersome, but that's how we did it. But now with the collaboration module, RFX module, we could just give everybody access, keep track of what the changes were, accept them, don't accept them, and all the way through to the point where once the collaboration was finished, we could publish it into the sourcing page, which is the bid board. The module I left out, once the bids come in, depending on if it was a request for a proposal, is the bid evaluation. That was oh man, it was heaven sent because that took away a whole lot of paper writing and Excel sheets, and everybody don't know Excel. So it took the place of all of that. That physical managing that you had to do. You had to make sure you didn't make mistakes. Your math had to be mathing. It had to be right. So bid evaluation was just awesome. So we started in the middle, went to the end, contract management, went back to the beginning requester, and then came back. So that's how we added it.
I love that, Mark. And I really love that one, it was sort of this full circle moment, but you're really driving home the point that I found I had to sell often when I worked in government, which is that there's really not a wrong place to start. And so sometimes starting in the middle,
Right.
if that's where your pain is, that's what your problem is, tackle that. You can always get all the way back to the beginning. And I think the story of Fulton County is that you did that. You started where you really needed to focus. You figured out sort of what needed to happen next, and then you ended up looping back to the start of the process. So I think it is a really nice reinforcement for there's no wrong way to start modernization. Just get started with where you need it. Which I think leads me into my next question, which is sort of what led you to select SOVRA, and what was the kind of initial functionality that you were looking for when you were kind of assessing that initial need?
Well, again, my director, Miss Felicia Strong Whitaker, and her team, they were looking for something to replace the bid board. So the first thing they were looking for was the sourcing page, was something where you could post bids, vendors could download them, and then they could submit the bids. That was the main thing. But I will have to say she was a visionary. She knew that eventually she'd have to go beyond that, wanted to go beyond that. And so in choosing SOVRA, we realized they had, again, the cradle to grave solution from the beginning, the request, all the way to contract management, everything in between. So even though we did not implement everything at one time, we knew that eventually that's where we were headed. And we knew we needed to get a platform that was tailored for us. And I want to clarify that later, but it was tailored for us. And when I say us, I mean purchasing. Most of the platforms you deal with, or as far as procurement, they're financial systems. That's who they buy for. That's who got the most bucks. That's who got all the bucks is finance. And so they get their system. And then if it can do any purchasing, that's great. Okay, that's okay, whatever. If it can do any inventory, oh, whatever. If it can do contract management, oh, whatever. Bottom line, it has to do financials. So in looking at SOVRA, we said we need something that is procurement driven, something that's going to tailor to procurement. And that's what I meant by tailor-made. It was tailor-made. It had all the modules. We just didn't implement them at one time, but it was tailor-made for procurement.
Amazing. Yeah, and I love that, Mark, mostly because we really focus on the fact that we are purpose-built for public procurement. That is our bread and butter. It's our lifeline. When I worked at the city of Philadelphia, we always used to say procurement is the backbone of all government operations. You want it to go really well. It deserves its investment. And boy, do I know how it is trying to sell some of that pitch to finance. So I get that. Speaking of sort of getting that buy-in, I'm a change management professional. That is how I spent a majority of my career in government. And so I would love to hear from you some of the different strategies that you use to get some of that internal buy-in and help drive adoption across your department.
Well, I think the first thing was when she first initially uh, went and got sober for our sourcing, uh, the senior management realized that they had to have it. And this is what she picked, so they were okay with it. So that was easy because they knew we had to have that. There was just no getting around it. We had to have the sourcing, that sourcing module. But then when she got to the point where, okay, now I've got to start adding these other modules, I need buy-in. Well, one of the main things I think she sold them on was that it tracks your request. It used again, we started out, you send an email, so now everything's in purchasing. So purchasing's getting the blame for it. It's in purchasing. I gave it to purchasing. When did you give it to purchasing? It don't matter. I gave it to them. They got it. They lost it. What are they doing with it? And then as a purchasing professional, I get asked, well, when did you get it? So now I've got to search through emails, and I don't know about you, but in this day and time, everybody wants to send an email. They stay up late at night sending emails, and I come into work, I've got 70, 80 emails from overnight. My box is empty when I get off at 5:30, 6, but it's full by the time I come in at 8 in the morning. And then through the day, you're getting more and more emails. Well, with Requester, it tracks it. So that was one of the selling points. It tracks all your requests, and we know where it is. And you will know where it is. And so that was one of the biggest selling points right there. And then you're able to run reports. Our senior manager, I don't know about anybody else's, but our senior management love reports. So when Ms. Whitaker began to talk about the different reports they can run and how we can track it, you can keep up with it, know where your request is at all times, who has it. You don't have to worry about the shell game. I gave it to Jeanette. I gave it to Mark. No, I gave it to Tom. I gave it to. You don't have to worry about any of that. You can see it, you know it, and so that was the biggest. Those were the major selling points. Some of the little peripheral selling points was it's going to make us more efficient, where we can process work faster. So they love that.
Yeah, no, Mark, apologize for I am one of those people that typically sends those late night scheduled for 8 a.m. emails. So I'm guilty of that. But yeah, no, I love sort of that grounding piece in transparency and visibility. And I think oftentimes many folks in leadership roles are especially interested in making sure they have a pulse on that. And so really hear the value behind that. I want to switch gears a little bit and sort of ask about your experience through onboarding. So how would you describe the support that you received from the SOVRA team throughout your onboarding process?
Great. Well, it was great. First and foremost, I would say they understood who they were dealing with because each entity, each governmental entity, each purchasing department is different. So you got to understand the environment, and you have to understand the environment of the entire government, and then you have to understand who you're dealing with. And so when you understand those things, and then you understand their processes, it's easy for them to help you and assist you in moving through your modernization. So I think those were some of the key points that really was good. I could reach out to them. I still can reach out to them, and I love it because they know me, they know my staff. I say my staff, but they know me, they know my staff because I'm the lead for our business. So they know me and they know my staff. They understand my staff. So when I tell them this is what it's got to be, they understand it because they already get to know who they are. And so it's great that they have that personal feeling, that personal touch with Fulton County.
Amazing. Well, that is a great experience, and I think really speaks to sort of something I am personally passionate about, which is, I think you really hit it on the head, Mark, that every government is different. Every agency has their own ways of operating. And I think it takes both a lot of work and a lot of commitment to make sure that you're asking the right questions and doing your due diligence and building those relationships. And so I'm glad that you all have had such a positive interaction with us through the onboarding process at Fulton County. I'm kind of curious about what part of the platform for you has made the biggest difference in your daily workflow.
I'm gonna say requester. That has been um, the biggest change. That's been the biggest difference, is that now we can track requests and legitimate requests, because some requests, I'm sorry, it's not worth the time it took them to type it in. And so staff, well, at Fulton County, I'm sorry, I apologize, but sometimes we love to reject. But now we can tell you why, and either you fix it or you don't fix it, but your request, but requester, let me stop. Requester it made the biggest difference.
That's amazing. That is amazing to hear. And I think again, speaking to that visibility and transparency, not just sort of within the process, but again, being able to help someone understand why and help someone understand how to improve the way that they make requests in the future is really powerful. I'm kind of interested to dig a little bit deeper. I think you alluded to sort of pieces of this when you were describing your overall journey, but I'm curious if there are any other features that you found that had a bigger impact on your process than you all expected when you started.
I would, again, I can't go on without saying requester definitely, but I think the bid evaluations really kind of had a profound impact, uh, as the way it's handled, and the way it took a lot of errors out of, miscalculations, a lot of hard work you had to go through to do. I mean, put it on an Excel spreadsheet, and I don't know how many are Excel savvy, but you're talking about putting a lot of numbers on Excel. You have evaluators anywhere from 3 to 5, and imagine calculating their scores, and then the bid form, the evaluation form changes from this solicitation to another, and the ease that it was to change that form from one RFP to another RFP, the evaluators adding them, scoring them. I mean, just that whole process just really kind of just made it was modernized to the point where it eliminated a lot of errors.
Mhm. Absolutely. I think that's something that we have certainly seen a lot. I've seen it in my own experience, but we also have a procurement modernization maturity model. And I think often we hear a lot about sort of the human error, the fact that there's so many manual steps of the process. And so thinking about how shifting to a more modernized experience really helps address some of those little things. I frankly used to be the one who would set up some of those spreadsheets, and I still have a little bit of still gives me a little bit of agita years and years later. So I hear you on getting rid of that, out with that, in with more modern ways to keep track of that. I want to shift gears again and kind of ask you about Fulton County's experience with cyber attacks. Obviously, we have seen quite a number of these increasing and attacking kind of government infrastructure over the last several years. And so would love to hear about when you all faced the ERP cyber attack back in 2024. How did SOBRA help keep procurement operations moving?
Well, let me start off by saying Stover's platform. There's a basic platform to it, our basic information that it has, but it's flexible enough to where we could adapt it, shape it, move it to our needs. When the cyber attack occurred, I'll never forget, everybody was scrambling. What they attacked was the financial system. And all of the financial system was down, and a lot of other systems, and the phones were down because I mean you're talking IT to get to the financial system, you've got to go through IT. So all the system, no phones, no emails, the financial system down, and so I'll never forget the county manager called all the departments checking to see, was everybody up and running, or who was down, or to what extent. Everybody was down, but then when they called purchasing, Miss Whitaker was like, "Oh, we're still running. What's we still can do all the things we're doing." And so then they said, "Well, since you're operational, can you help us? We've got invoices. We're still, they did a workaround to try to process invoices, and but yet the finance department had to receive those invoices, had to do receivers on those, and they had to review them and all of that. So, well, use we used Sobra. We used the requester. We set up some of the finance people. I gave them temporary access to looking, and they would receive invoices through Sova. They received the receivers through Sova. Sova, the receivers were done. All of that, all of this whole process for finance was so that they could process purchase orders was done using Sova. And you had departments that, the departments that the finance team didn't want to give back the rights because they loved it so much. And so that's how, we used it to do all of that.
Yeah, that's truly amazing, Mark, and I think really kind of highlights sort of the continuity of operations and really thinking about how you keep the lights on in crisis. And so I'm glad to hear sort of how you all were able to work through that. And it sounds like maybe you built up some some more advocates for change by having your finance folks get more plugged into Sobra, which is great. I want to shift gears again a little bit to sort of hear your experience and whether you've seen a difference in vendor participation or vendor supplier relationships since you all have made the switch and move over to Sovra.
Jeanette, before I move to that, let me just add one other thing. It just kind of hit my mind because something has happened. What happened because uh, when I say finance, I'm talking about some of the top managers of finance during this cyber attack. They got a closer look at Sovra, at our platform. And since then, they've been wanting to get with purchasing to do more collaboration to learn more about the things we can do on our side, but also for us to learn more about finance and processing those documents. So what it has done is created a more love for our platform, more support for our platform, but it also has created more of a working relationship with purchasing and finance because of that situation and because Silver was able to help do the things that it did. So I just wanted to add that.
Oh, I'm glad you did, Mark. That is huge. That is huge. Thank you for adding that tidbit in here. So I'll repeat my question here. So have you seen any differences in vendor participation or supplier relationships since making the switch to Sovra?
Well, I will say this. They're learning to submit their bids on time. No more of those last minute walk-ins because we don't have walk-ins anymore. Whatever time you say it closes, that solicitation closed, it closed. And they are learning that. They're also starting to get better. We're getting better bids. They're a lot cleaner because we're able to ask for certain things, ask in different envelopes, the information that we want to look at, and that cuts down. Really, it helps them because it cuts down on waste. They don't have to print out 5 copies of a bid proposal And then they don't have to come downtown, find a place to park, and then run in there and try to get it in there on time. And this is what we're getting, the feedback we're getting from some of our vendors, because we do put out a survey to ask them, and they love it. So they're loving it because it's a lot more financial feasible for them, and it just time wise it helps saves them time, and so we're getting better, cleaner bids.
That sounds like a win-win for both you and your vendor community. You're getting better responses in, and it is an easier and less cumbersome process. So to me, that is a match made in heaven when it comes to government services and interacting with members of the public. So that is amazing. I want to move into our next question, being conscious of time here. So I'd love to hear a little bit more. I think you've sort of talked a little bit about this. I know we've talked a bit about Excel and sort of, how SOBRA has helped you all move away from that. But other areas or opportunities where SOBRA has helped you either improve efficiency or reduce some of the administrative burden that you all have had since you've modernized?
They're great. Well, when it comes down to publishing bid results, you're talking a couple of clicks, it's done, versus in the past, we have to create a publishing document that shows everybody that submitted the bid. When it comes time to do awards, we can send not only award letters, but we can also send not awarded letters, and we can send thank you for looking at the solicitation letters all through SOBRA, all through the platform. And it's instead of trying to create all these different letters, typing the letters, all of it, now we've got templates where we can set it up, and you can send all of that information through the platform. So that has really helped administratively, all of that.
Yeah, that is huge. I think you can't stress enough sort of the administrative burden. I know I saw a question maybe peep in about this, but I know from some of the modernization efforts we did in the city, we really were looking at the time spent on some of that administrative burden. And then after rolling out a solution, where did we see improvements there? So I really feel like you're hitting the nail on the head, Mark, on really reducing that burden and then really optimizing that time to do more high value work. So I want to shift. We have a couple more questions here, folks, and then I think we can get to some of the questions that have been submitted. So Mark, you talked a lot about kind of at the end of that ERP story, sort of a more reinvigorated relationship with finance and leadership at finance, really thinking about how you all work together. I'm curious if there are other internal stakeholders where you've kind of noticed that you either have a different relationship with them or collaborating with them differently, given the impact of SOBRA?
Well, we call them DREAM. It's really, I guess you can say, general services and construction. That relationship has gotten better. Finance, our community development department, really across the board. Sheriff, the judges, because remember that Fulton County does everything, a host of everything. And so really all departments have been touched, all of them, they like it again because of it's transparency, and they love that transparency. So they're able to keep up with things. So they're just getting more and more, I guess, falling more and more in love with SOBRA.
I love it. I feel like transparency, visibility, certainly themes that are coming out of this conversation today. So we have about 3 questions left. This one, I'm really excited to kind of get your take on it here, Mark. What advice would you give to another city or county that's using manual or outdated systems?
First thing I would say, stop working your staff to death. Get away from the manual and modernize. But then what it also does, it allows you to understand what your processes and procedures are, because you have to document them, and then you got to translate that into the platform. And so when you understand, sometimes you'll realize you're doing things you shouldn't be doing, or that you could stop, or that you could do different, or you could do better. And so, yeah, I would tell you to look at those things. Also, when you're training, I mean, or trying to implement it, talk to them about transparency and how you can track for them. And they can keep up with where things are themselves. And I think that would help when it comes time to modernize your outdated system.
Yeah, I think your part about working staff to death, Mark, is really well taken here, especially as we, in the government space. I've worked for the federal government before joining SOVRA here. So, thinking about things like staff capacity and sort of upcoming or pending retirements and thinking about that, I think it's really important to kind of consider that full ecosystem, not just the work that's being done today, but sort of the question is, how do you prepare for making sure that work can continue into tomorrow is one that's certainly top of my mind in this space. Want to move to our second to last formal question here. Is there anything, Mark, that you wish you had known before starting your procurement modernization journey?
Oh my goodness. I guess that we should have done a better job to document our process and procedures. I think that because when you come to task that you have to do it, you realize you haven't been doing it. And a lot of it has been word of mouth. And a friend of mine loved to say, if it hasn't been written, it hasn't been said. And a lot of times you wonder why we don't do this or we don't do that because you haven't written it. You said it, but then, they forget. We forget. We're human. And so you realize that you have not documented your process and procedures. And that's the one thing I wish we had done a better job of before we started this journey.
Yeah, I will echo that from my own government experience, that is often the hardest starting point, and I think is one that sometimes is avoided because it can be so complex to try to sift through many years of, well, this is the way we've always done it, and sort of putting those pieces together. So it is tough, but I would agree with you, Mark. I think really knowing where you stand, really understanding your current operating state is incredibly imperative before you really
Yes.
roll up your sleeves and dive
Yes.
into the tech components of modernization for sure. Excellent. So moving on to our last formal question, and I think we've got a couple of open questions here. Would love to hear, Mark, kind of what's next for you, for Fulton County, as you all continue your modernization journey.
That's a very good question. One of the things is trying to understand the possibilities of the system. So to understand the possibilities, that means you've got to learn it. You got to begin to master what it can do. I still don't know everything, but everybody call me the guru, the silver guru. But there's things I still don't know. Currently, right now, we're about to integrate DocuSign. And so there's just, and then we're also our financial system, we're going to integrate our requisitioning on the front end in the requester. So those are two areas that we're working on now. And that's because we realize the possibilities of the system. So I'm telling you, Sobra, I hate it. I know some of y'all gonna think I'm on the payroll. I'm not. But it's just, it has made life easier. And I love the fact that it's a purchasing platform, first and foremost, but yet it's flexible enough to kind of accommodate some of the things we want to do and how we do it. And so that's the biggest things I'm thinking about as we go further on this journey, understanding the possibilities of the systems and the benefits at the same time.
I love that so much, Mark, understanding the possibility and really hearing sort of the value of what's there and the flexibility to make it what you need it. Those are some of the things I'm taking away from what you just shared. Blake, I know we have a couple minutes left and I saw some questions come in. Would sort of love to get your take on what we might want to answer while we still have some time with Mark.
Absolutely. I'll go in order that they came in. So thank you for those who were patient that sent them in earlier on. So the first one, this is an agency that's currently using the the bid posting module. And they asked if given limited option to expand their services, should they start expanding from the beginning and add requisition module or add the modules after bid posting?
That's hard. It really depends on, I mean, I know which way we did it. And if I had my druthers, I'd have started at the beginning. But because of the urgency, we started in the middle. So I think Jeanette said it best, that you got to understand what your emergency need is now. What is it you need right now? And that's where you start. And then from there, you just sort of pick and choose what's going to be in your best interest for you, for your agency, because you know your agency better than I do.
Excellent. Jeanette, did you want to add anything to that, or I think you're nodding in agreement? So
No, I'm nodding in
excellent. Yep.
agreement. Mark's got it.
Excellent, excellent. All right, the next one, bit of a hardball one here, but because I know the quantifying is always difficult. But out of curiosity, Mark, do you have any idea how much time each purchasing employee has saved through going through this modernization effort, based on where you were before to where you are now?
Unfortunately, I don't have anything to quantify that. I do know that since we started with Sobra, we've had about 7,000 requests. Now, we've missed some because sometimes departments want to put 2 or 3 requests on one requester, and we try to make them do individual because that's how they would have to do anyway. But imagine 7,000, roughly 20 people dealing 7,000 requests over the course of, what is it, 2 years, 2.5, 3 years? Yeah, we just started Requester maybe a year ago, 2 years ago. So I haven't quantified it, but that's just to give you some idea, some ballpark of kind of where we are.
Excellent. Next one, there's two more questions here. Someone was asking about how the modernization efforts, has it impacted how you help business units with their budgeting and planning processes?
Well, I think what it does, it lets them know that the specification they give us got to be better. Because with the collaboration, we're able to see their scope of work better, and the things they're asking from the vendor. So we're able to review that a lot better. That's given us an opportunity to put our professionalism in it, because we're more than just paper pushers. We review this stuff, and if it don't make sense, to me, then how is it going to make sense to the vendors? So I guess what I'm saying is it allows us an opportunity to review, look at what they have, to clean it up, make it better, to redo it, and I just love that. I love that about it.
Excellent. All right, last question here. Is there any plans to incorporate a PO system or to track and or create and track POs? Oh, Mark, you're on mute.
I had it off and then I put it on. I'm sorry. Because I lean back and go, oh, hey. Well, I'm also on the lead team for our integration with our financial system. That's going live in November. So when they submit, the department submit a requisition in our financial system, it's going to hit in BidNet. And so when we create the PO, there is a field to put the PO number back, but that's something manually we would do. But at this point, no. But I will say we're leaning more toward tracking dollar amounts for vendors, so that when departments reach that threshold, we'll be able to warn them, let them know. The other thing I missed, and I apologize for this, we also can track certificate of insurance, because we have a shuttle service, and unfortunately, well, I'm not gonna get into a lot of details, had an accident, and they asked for the insurance certificate. Well, guess what? BidNet has it. You're able to store it there when and get reminders as to when that certificate of insurance is about to expire. So there's other things we're doing. The actual PO, which is the actual question. No, we feel like at this point, that's not something we want to do. May happen later after I retire, but not right now.
Fantastic. Thanks, Mark. All right, Jenna, I'll pass it back to you.
Thanks, Blake. And folks, thanks for hanging out with us a couple extra minutes here. Just wanted to say sort of where do you take it from here? So if this is kind of your first engagement with us here at SOVRA, we always recommend taking a look at our maturity assessment. I mentioned it before. It really gives you a great sort of like starting place of where might you want to begin, or where might you need to invest before you sort of leap to just investing in some technology. So really measuring where you are, thinking about how to get there. I think Mark said it, I said it, like really thinking about what's your emergency right now? What problem are you trying to solve right now? What does that mean for your starting point? Then how do you build from there? It doesn't have to be linear. You can kind of go with where you need to go, but going with what's most needed is a great place to start. Mark talked a lot about engaging leadership, securing sponsorship, jokingly with getting our friends in finance on board, but really thinking about who you need to advocate for what you're trying to do in your organization is really key. Thinking about training and change management. I will always harp on that as a change management professional. And then thinking about how you're monitoring progress and how you're adapting as you go. So the QR code is here for the maturity assessment. Encourage you all, if you haven't taken it, to go ahead and take it. And with that, I think we're getting ready to wrap up here. So just want to say big thank you, Mark, for sharing all of your insight and your experience with the audience. I certainly appreciated hearing more from you. So thank you for participating today, and thank you all on the call for listening in. We hope you found the information helpful and hope you join us for another webinar soon.
You're welcome, and I thank you for the opportunity to just share. And then can I just, one last thing I want to say? Finance is our friend. They got the bucks.
I love that, Mark. Finance is your friend, y'all. Thank you so much for joining us today, and have a really spectacular rest of your day and end of your week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.